Everyone remembers the day when Richard Nixon stepped into the Oval Office and promised to defend the Republic. What few expected was that the presidency itself would become the epicenter of a criminal conspiracy that reshaped American trust in government. June 17, 1972, began like any other morning at the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C. A night watchman, Frank Wills, discovered tape on a basement door. Then a group of burglars dressed like ordinary handymen.
They were arrested inside the Democratic National Committee headquarters. A handful of men with ties to a private campaign apparatus called the Committee to Re-elect the President, or CREEP. What looked at first like a bungled break-in would in months unravel into the most consequential political scandal of the 20th century. Investigations revealed the burglars were not lone thieves.
Payments were arranged to silence participants. The CIA was asked to tell the FBI to stop certain lines of inquiry. James McCord, one of the burglars and a former CIA officer, wrote a letter from prison alleging that prosecutors had been misled. That letter pierced the veil. The Senate convened televised hearings. The nation watched as subpoenas and denials clashed on live television. Then, the tapes. The Nixon White House had recorded many conversations in the Oval Office. When investigators demanded those tapes, Nixon refused, citing executive privilege, and the dispute went to the Supreme Court. In United States v. Nixon, 1974, the court ordered the tapes turned over, a unanimous rebuke. Among the recordings was the now infamous June 23, 1972 conversation between Nixon and Chief of Staff H.R. Haldeman, in which Nixon approved a plan to have the CIA intervene in the FBI's investigation. This smoking gun tape contradicted public denials that the president had known of the cover-up. Facing near certain conviction and loss of political support, Nixon made an extraordinary choice. On August 8, 1974, he announced his resignation. He left office the next day, the first U.S. president to do so. His successor, Gerald Ford, would later pardon him, a controversial act that closed criminal prosecution but left unanswered many moral reckoning questions. Watergate was more than a break-in. It was a deliberate attempt to use the powers of the presidency to manipulate, intimidate, and obstruct the rule of law. The conspiracy stitched together political ambition, covert operations, and a systemic willingness to lie. The tapes, once secret, then decisive, made the conspiracy undeniable. Watergate's legacy is complicated. Strengthened checks and balances, reforms in campaign finance and federal oversight, and a sobering lesson about how power can corrupt. But perhaps the clearest lesson endures in the image of a president estranged from the Constitution he swore to defend. Undone not by a single act, but by a pattern of deception, exposed by a combination of vigilant reporting, courageous whistleblowers, and the slow, grinding mechanisms of justice. I'm Crime Master 9. Subscribe if you want the darkest cases history tried to forget. What case should I cover next? Comment below.